Hi guys, this is Max here, back again with hopefully another great political video. And today we're going to take a little look at the 2022 United States House of Representatives map. Now, there are still 5 states that have not submitted a final congressional map, and one of them actually did so, but the map was deemed to be unconstitutional because the Democrats in Maryland had created a congressional map that was so heavily biased and extremely gerrymandered in favor of Democrats that the Democratic court inside the state of Maryland, a Democratic court struck down a Democratic map because it was too extreme. That's a great victory for democracy. It's a great victory for the people of Maryland because they are not being taken their choice from corrupt elitist government politicians who did some backdoor shenanigans in order to make sure that they kept being elected by huge majorities rather than having to campaign for office. So, now what I want to take a look at are all those districts that are part of the interactive map that we can access. It's the vast majority of all our districts. It's just 52 that we can't make a prediction for because they're not accessible yet. And 270 to Win has their own predictions, what districts they think are going to be safe, likely, or lean towards either party. I agree with some of these predictions. I do not agree with a few others, and we'll go through each and every single one of those now. All right, now let's get started up in Maine. Now, this district here, even though it is definitely a Trump district, has shown itself to be fairly supportive towards a Democratic candidate that is very moderate. I keep forgetting his name. I think it was Jared Golden. Yep, Jared Golden is the representative from that district. It's a fairly moderate Democrat, and even though Donald Trump won the district for the presidential election, he still won re-election because he's a very moderate person, and I think he should not have too many troubles getting re-elected this time around, even though it's going to be a red wave year. And yeah, by the way, this is going to be a red wave year. Biden has rebounded somewhat in terms of popularity, but the Republicans are still vastly ahead of the Democrats in terms of the generic ballot. Now, in Connecticut, I believe things are going to be a little closer than this map shows it to be. The new map is not much more favorable to Republicans than the old one, but because this time around the election will be a lot closer, and also not to forget because how can I move this thing? There we go. Now, the reason why I believe these two districts in Connecticut are going to be much closer than they were last time around is because the overall national environment will be much more favorable in terms of being favorable to the Republicans, and because the new districts are less favorable to the Democrats than the old ones were. Now, New York has passed a heavily gerrymandered map. I really, really, really hope it's going to be struck down by the courts, because if you take a look at that, it's just disgusting. I mean, let me zoom in on Lower Manhattan. These districts look like ramen noodles that were clumped together in a bowl or something. I mean, these districts are just disgusting. I can tell you that right now. This one here runs from Albany all the way down to the New York City suburbs. That's not okay. No, that shouldn't be a thing. However, I actually don't think that these districts are going to be so Democratic. That district down here will probably end up going Republican, and I believe that Republicans should be fairly safe at winning this Staten Island district. Not so much the Queens, Lower Manhattan / Bronx district. I mean, it's an ugly district, but I think the Democrats are going to win it. It was heavily gerrymandered. I also think that this district here will be a lot closer. It's actually a complete toss-up, I believe. The Democratic position is not that secure as it's being portrayed in many of these predictions. And I also think that this district in Connecticut is probably going to be a toss-up rather than a safe or even lean Democratic district. It surprises me that 270 to Win shows one of the two districts in Rhode Island to be likely. I actually believe this one's going to be safe. So, but, I mean, you never know. It's going to be a pretty heavily Republican year. Also, the Syracuse district is most certainly going to be lean. Upstate New York has a lot of Republican voters, even though it also has many rural voters that do tend to be Democratic, simply because New York State overall is very liberal. Though, of course, New York City itself is much more liberal than the rest of the state. These two districts in northern Pennsylvania, they have a heavily manufacturing-based industry that has swung heavily towards the right during the Trump administration, and that trend will likely continue. this district here in the Philadelphia suburbs, all the most certain will be a toss-up, while the one that's in the more rural part of Pennsylvania is, at least in my humble opinion, going to be a safe red seat. Connor Lamb, the previous representative from this district right outside Pittsburgh, is retiring, so I think it shouldn't be too difficult for the Republicans to pick it up. In the state of Ohio, 270 to win hasn't made an official prediction, but I can draw up the 345 map that shows us redistricted in every single state. No, 538, sorry. And it shows most of these districts to be Republican except for the Cleveland and Columbus district. These other two districts have slight Republican/Democratic favors, but I think both of them will be won by the Republicans quite narrowly since it's going to be a red wave year, all the most certainly. Now, of course, Cleveland and Columbus are going to be safe Democrat. However, most other districts should be pretty safe for the Republicans. The only two about I'm not entirely sure is this one because it includes the Cleveland suburbs. This one because it includes some very Democratic cities such as Toledo around the Great Lakes. And this district right here because it also includes Dayton, Ohio, which has trended to the left in more recent years and it has a lot of people in it. Now, in Virginia, I believe that the Virginia Beach area is going to swing back to the Republicans. It did turn from Republican to Democrat under the Trump years because Trump didn't do so well in the suburbs. However, in the 2021 gubernatorial elections in the state of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin won the area by a sizable amount. He was from there, but certainly his popularity is going to boost Republican momentum in the area. This district here is also going to be Republican, I believe. I think it has Abigail Spanberger as the incumbent. And I would be a liar if I'd say that she's overwhelmingly popular because she's not. And many people just call her a mini version of Nancy Pelosi. Probably because of that, she actually didn't vote for Pelosi as the House Speaker. We'll see whether that plays out for her. Now, North Carolina actually had a not too badly gerrymandered Republican map, but it was still a gerrymander. And even though North Carolina is a red state, it does have very Democratic courts. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me too much that the map was struck down. The new map is much more favorable to the Democrats than the old one was. However, I still believe that the Republicans are going to win this district, and this other district that has a retiring Democratic incumbent I view as a complete toss-up. The suburban district in southern Charlotte, I think is going to be lean this time around, but especially because the Charlotte area is growing heavily, and I mean really heavily, I think the Democrats have fairly good prospects at winning this in the future by pretty solid margins. Now, Georgia was secured a lot for the Republicans. I believe that all Republican districts will be safe. And this one district down south, it's actually just +4 Democrat on the 538 side. I can show you here right now. Yeah, it's pretty close. And even though it has been held by Democrats for a very long time, African-American voters in Georgia, even though you think they would support the Democratic Party, especially the ones in the rural areas, have trended to the right. And I think it will make it possible for the Republicans to pick this district up for the first time in a very, very long time. Now Nashville used to have a Democratic district in Tennessee, but it was phased out by the Republicans. At this current point in time, it looks unlikely that the Tennessee map will be overturned because it still has one majority-minority district down in Memphis. And just by the way, under the Civil Rights Act, all southern states are required to have at least one majority-minority district, unless it's completely impossible to draw one, like in the case of Arkansas. Yeah, you can't draw a majority black district in Arkansas. Now, in Illinois, the Democrats passed a pretty aggressive gerrymander. However, I believe it could actually end up being a dummy-mander, meaning that it ends up helping the Republicans more than it hurts them. This one district here will likely go Republican, this other one as well, along with that one. And this one right in the center of Chicago, actually is not that Democratic, because if you look at the map from 538, it's just a +6 Democratic district. And this time around, in the year 2022, we might have a +6 or +7 or even +8 Republican environment. So I actually think that the Republicans are favored to win it, and this other district further out in the suburbs is going to be lean, I believe. Now, the Kansas City district, I think, will be lean. This one will be lean too, though there's a solid case to be made that it'll be a toss-up because it has a Democratic incumbent. I think that district in Minnesota is really a pure toss-up. We don't have to touch that one. And this district will slightly favor the Republicans, I believe. The other district in Colorado right here, you might say that this is going to be a lean district. However, I think the Democrats are going to have a pretty easy play because it has includes many areas of the suburbs of Denver that are pretty liberal, and it won't be too difficult for the Democrats to win. Now, the district in southern New Mexico will certainly be likely Republican. This other district will be a total toss-up. Hispanic voters have trended to the right significantly in 2020, and I believe that trend will continue. This other district right in the heart of New Mexico, though, is probably going to stay likely to lean Democrat. However, that district in the north, I think it will be at the very least a toss-up, and also it does include a very sizable oil industry, and I do not really think that oil workers would be on board with off the Biden trail this time around. No, they're not going to support Biden in large numbers. Now, these two districts in Arizona are going to be likely. The other one actually should be likely as well, but it does have a Democratic incumbent, which leads me to believe that it'll be more competitive. And also, this district right in the heart of Phoenix will almost certainly be a toss up because 538 shows it to be a toss up. Its voting history is quite conservative, and I do not think that the Democrats will win it simply because it has a Democratic incumbent. Or does it even have one? No, I think that district is actually open. No, it does have a Democratic incumbent, but I think he'll be in for yeah, the Republicans are going to give him a run for his money. Now, I don't think we have to cover Texas. The Republicans here really did a very solid job at making this state be as uncompetitive as it possibly can be. I think there are literally like two districts down in the Rio Grande Valley that are even remotely competitive. I mean, yeah, we don't really have to cover Texas. Nevada, I think, will have three highly competitive districts and one safe Republican district. That was definitely a dummy manner on the Democratic side. And if we take a little look at California, we have a lot of districts. And a lot of people on the right said that California gerrymandered its districts. But keep in mind, California does redistricting by computer. There's no human brain involved. So there's a certain sense to believe that actually California's map is at least somewhat equal. And you also have to keep in mind there are a lot more Democrats in California than there are Republicans. But of course, there are still Republicans in California, which is the reason why right now we have like 7 or 8 representatives that are Republicans who are from Cali. That's something that gets overlooked, but there are Republicans in California. I believe that was the state in which Donald Trump got the third most amount of votes. He got 4 million, which is more than he got in most other states. But in terms of the congressional makeup, I think this district is currently occupied by a very popular moderate Republican. He even voted to impeach Trump. This district here is Mike Garcia's district. Mike Garcia is not a moderate Republican, but he won there twice, and it was never really a red district. It always leaned Democrat while he won elections there, and he also is very popular. He has appeal. I think he should be safe. Now, down here, these districts are very interesting because that, I believe, is Katie Porter's district. She's pretty liberal, and I think her district is a toss-up district. So, yeah, I think it's going to be close, but I think the Republicans might eke out a victory. And this other district is currently Michelle Steele's district, who is a Asian American in a majority Asian district. So I think that plays off in her favor, even though that's not the only thing that matters. And yeah, apart from that, in Southern California, only one adjustment needs to be made. I believe that this district down here will be lean instead of safe. And that other district here, I did not know about that one, but if the Hispanic vote, which in Imperial County continues to trend right, which it did in the 2020 election, it also should be a little closer. Now, talking about Northern California, I believe these other districts are pretty solid in the way how they're making predictions. I mean, area that is partly Republican but mostly Democrat. This district here I view as a pure toss-up, though, because even though it has a Democratic lean, it will be a very close election year. It will be a very close election there, with the overall nation being so heavily in favor of the Republicans, because it's going to be a red wave year. I'm really sorry for my bad pronunciation this evening. I mean, it was a very long week at school, and I'm really trying to make the best that I can right now. In Oregon, I think this district is going to be lean. The Democratic incumbent is not too popular. Sorry, no, not that district. It's the other one. The Democratic incumbent, Kurt Schroeder, is not too popular. He doesn't really have whole lot of support from the people. I think it'll actually be a toss-up district. He doesn't have the support of the liberal base. He doesn't have support from moderates and centrists. It'll be difficult for him to win re-election in this other district here. I believe will also be lean. It's not too urban, so the Republicans definitely have a shot at it. Apart from that, Washington's map is very interesting, actually, because it has these super square districts, and then it has these super thin districts that look like little worms. And on 538, two of them are being shown to be very competitive. They're both within the 10% margin. So I think at the very least we should put them as likely. They're not entirely safe for the Democrats. All right. Now going back to full size, I believe we have covered every part of and region of the country so far. The only one that I'd like to take a little look at that we probably left out is Michigan. Now, Michigan. I think in this district up here, John James is running, who had previously tried to go for governor and for senator 2 times, and he failed 2 times. He'll win. He's a good candidate. He's a veteran, and he can appeal to African-American voters. This district here is from a traditionally conservative area, so I think the Republicans should not struggle too much in winning it. That one is a complete toss-up, but I would tilt it in favor of the Democrats simply because it still has this heavily blue-collar legacy Democrat population that might still favor a generic Democrat over a new Republican. Now, that's the overall map so far. The Republicans are in the lead, as you might expect. Not all maps have published yet, and the ones who still have to publish are mostly from Republican states like Missouri, Louisiana, and Florida. So I believe at the end of the day, the Republicans will be at precisely the majority in terms of favorable districts. The Democrats will be lacking behind the Republicans, and if you split the difference, I think it is pretty safe to say that the next House of Representatives will have a Republican speaker, and that Nancy Pelosi will be retired once and for all. And I think that people on both sides of the aisle can agree Nancy Pelosi is a terrible representative, a terrible whore. I'm sorry, strong word, but it's kind of true. She's done so much insider trading. She's gone against the best interests of the country and her party, by the way, in her own favor. Because even if she was a more progressive Democrat, even if she had a more liberal agenda and was just less of a bad optics person, she would still have helped her party more than she actually ended up helping it. And I'm not saying that there's no bad stuff done by the Republicans either. There were some pretty crappy speakers that the Republicans put up in the past, such as John Boehner, who was also a complete corrupted government insider. And the Republicans have some nut jobs that just go crazy like Paul Gosar. The Democrats have a few nut jobs as well, but overall Nancy Pelosi represents the system. She represents how wrong and broken the system is, just like Mitch McConnell does in the Senate, and she needs to be gone. Now, there was a lot of information in this video. I hope you picked up at least some of it, and I also hope that you like this video and that you're going to give it a thumbs up. If you did not like it, please feel free to write a very nasty, mean comment denouncing me and my bad optics and bad skills. I can learn from that and make my next video a whole lot better. Now, I hope you guys will have a good day, and I hope that I'll see you next time. Goodbye, my friends. My favorite homies.